Hello, assalamu alaikum, welcome back to my YouTube channel. What's cooking in Zahira's kitchen today? As you can see from the title, we're making old school sprinkle cake. You guys, we're reminiscing back into the old school days. This used to be my favorite dessert. To follow the recipe, I've written down everything you need for this recipe in the description down below. And now let's watch how we do this. So as you can see, I started with 250 grams of unsalted room temperature butter, or you can use 1 cup of butter. Make sure the butter is unsalted, and also make sure it's room temperature. If you have in the fridge, I'd advise you to take it out. And then what we're going to do now is whisk your butter until fluffy. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a handheld mixer, and if you're going to use a spoon to mix, good luck, your hand is going to hurt, but you can also use that if you have the time for it. And then I'm going to add in 2 cups of sugar. With this part, I like it this, as in like this taste. Some of my friends do add more sugar, so you can add more sugar if you want. I would say add a 1/2 cup, because at the end we're going to use icing on top and you don't want the cake to be too sweet. You're going to also have this with custard, so I'd prefer you just add 2 cups of sugar. So yeah, as you can see, I'm adding in the sugar bit by bit. This is to make sure that the sugar dissolves into the butter, and so that you can have a fluffy consistency. I'm using granulated sugar. You can use caster sugar. I didn't have any caster sugar. You guys, with this quarantine and the lockdown, literally nothing is available in stores. Not even caster sugar, honestly. But anyway, anything would do. Just use any granulated white sugar. And then just scrape off the sides to make sure that everything is mixed in, and then keep whisking that into high. And then now we're going to slowly add in our other ingredients, which is the eggs. So with this recipe, I'm using 4 large eggs. If your eggs are small, then use 5 eggs, medium eggs, and should be fine. You're going to have to add in your eggs 1 by 1 each, gradually as you mix all of them in. And then you're going to have to keep whisking that until it's fluffy. I used to love making this cake and eating this cake. Guys, fun fact, one of the reasons why I've started baking was because of school cakes. Honestly, school dinner cakes were literally just so nice. Literally used to make my day in school. They were the only things I used to look forward to back in school days. Yeah, so just keep whisking that until you have a fluffy, airy consistency. And then we're going to add in 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And because I'm going to be using self-raising flour, you don't have to add in a lot of baking powder. But if you're using plain flour, which I would not recommend, but if that's all you have, it's fine. You can add in baking powder, but I would recommend you to add 2.5 tablespoons of baking powder, so that you have that fluffy, cakey sponge at the end. And then I've added in 1 tablespoon of vanilla essence, or you can add in vanilla paste or vanilla flavoring. Anything, honestly, they all have different names. And then I've added in 1/2 cup of milk. Could be cold milk, could be room temperature milk, but just don't add in hot milk or warm milk. And then just whisk that for a bit. And then now I'm going to add in 2.5 cups of self-raising flour. And I'm going to keep on slowly adding that until we mix that very nicely, until you have a smooth consistency. So yeah, just keep on mixing that for a good 5 minutes. I usually whisk everything for 5 minutes, just to make sure that everything is perfectly mixed. And then I've just added in the last bit of the flour, and then you're going to mix that to high levels. And then, yeah, so now in this part, as your cake mixes, make sure you grease your pan or your baking tray that you're going to use. I'm using 9 by 9 inch baking tray. If you're using a round cake tray, I would say divide the mixture, or else you're going to end up with a raw cake, because this is a big batch of a cake mix. And then just add everything in and level the cake. Make sure your oven is preheated. I usually turn on my oven just before I start baking to 180 degrees and preheat it for 10 to 15 minutes, and then insert my cake in the middle. So then I'm just make sure you level out your cake, and if your cake has bubbles, just make sure you pat it onto the table, and then you bake it before you put it in the oven, and then you bake it. So then you're going to bake that for 35 minutes. Whilst that bakes, we're going to make our icing. The mistake that people do with the icing is they don't measure it properly, and they add in a lot of water, which is really bad because you're going to end up with a very thin paste. So I'm using milk. You can use water if you like, but I'd recommend you use milk as well. And I'm going to slowly add in my milk until we have this thick paste, because you want that white thick paste like the school days. You don't want it to be too thin. And I've also seen another mistake where people do they add in the sprinkles with the icing. Just don't do that. Just do that at the end. You guys, I left in my cake just a tad bit too long. I promise the cake is not dried out. It just looks it. But yeah, so the cake is out of the oven. Make sure the cake cools down before you add in the icing, or else your icing will literally will melt. And then with the condensation of the cake, it will just be really thin and it just doesn't look nice. It just looks watery. And you don't want a disappointing icing. Honestly, it just breaks my heart. And then now that it's perfectly coated, as you can see, that thick paste, just add in your sprinkles. I'm using rainbow sprinkles from any supermarket, corner shop, any local stores, everywhere they stock this sprinkles. And voila, you're done. Just wait this to cool down and wait for it to set, and you just enjoy your cake. You can have this with cream. You can have this with custard. I used to have it with a warm custard back in school days, but right now at this age I prefer it without custard. And thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment down below.